The receipt trembled in her hands as the cashier slid it back across the counter, a thin strip of paper that felt heavier than any stone she had ever carried, because the balance due had suddenly vanished, erased by a stranger she never saw clearly, a man who paid her bill and walked away before she could even understand what had just happened. In that moment, with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and the smell of cheap coffee and disinfectant in the air, Hannah Collins stood frozen, unaware that this quiet act of kindness would follow her for years, shaping her life in ways she could never imagine. And before the story unfolds any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and unseen miracles, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can reach hearts that need them. Hannah was 26 years old and living in a small apartment in Dayton, Ohio, a place with thin walls, a flickering kitchen light, and a constant hum from the highway outside. Her life at that point was defined by exhaustion. She worked 2 jobs, one as a receptionist at a struggling dental clinic during the day and another cleaning offices at night, and even then the numbers never quite added up. Student loans, medical bills from her late mother's illness, and the simple cost of surviving pressed down on her chest every morning when she woke up. She had dreams once of becoming a nurse, of helping people the way she had tried to help her mother. But those dreams felt like photographs from another life, faded and tucked away in a drawer she no longer opened. The night the stranger paid her bill, Hannah had gone to a small neighborhood pharmacy to pick up antibiotics for a lingering infection she had been ignoring because she could not afford the prescription. Her body ached, her head throbbed, and her bank account balance sat dangerously close to zero. When the total appeared on the screen, her stomach dropped. She knew she did not have enough. She calculated quickly, silently, wondering what she could put back, what could wait, and whether her body could endure another week without medication. That was when the cashier's expression changed, softening with surprise, and the words came that the bill had already been taken care of by the man who had just left the store. Hannah turned too late to see more than the back of a worn brown jacket disappearing through the sliding doors. She walked out into the cold Ohio night stunned, the plastic bag cutting into her fingers as if to remind her that it was real. She looked around the parking lot, hoping to catch a glimpse of the stranger, but he was gone. There was no name, no explanation, no chance to say thank you. Only a receipt stamped paid and a strange warmth spreading through her chest that felt unfamiliar and almost frightening in its intensity. That night, for the first time in months, she cried not from despair but from something dangerously close to hope. Life did not suddenly become easy after that. Hannah still worked long hours, still counted every dollar, still lay awake listening to the highway and wondering how long she could keep going. But something subtle had shifted inside her. When days grew heavy, she remembered that moment in the pharmacy. The quiet certainty that someone, somewhere, had seen her struggle and chosen to help without being asked. It gave her the strength to keep applying for better jobs, to take one online class at a time toward a nursing degree, and to believe that her life was not finished yet. Years passed, marked by small victories and painful setbacks. Hannah moved to a slightly better apartment in Columbus, Ohio, closer to a community college where she continued her studies. She made friends who became like family, people who shared notes, rides, and late-night meals when money was tight. She lost others along the way, relationships strained by stress and exhaustion. Through it all, the memory of the stranger stayed with her, a quiet beacon she returned to whenever doubt threatened to swallow her. By the time Hannah turned 34, she was working as a registered nurse at a nonprofit hospital, a place that served many patients who reminded her of herself years earlier. She understood their fear, their embarrassment, the way financial stress could feel as suffocating as illness itself. She went out of her way to sit with them a little longer, to explain things carefully, to offer comfort that went beyond medical charts and routines. Her colleagues noticed her compassion, but few knew where it came from. One autumn afternoon, after a particularly long shift, Hannah volunteered to help with a free health clinic organized by a local church on the outskirts of town. The gymnasium was filled with folding chairs, donated medical supplies, and families waiting patiently for care they could not afford elsewhere. As Hannah moved from station to station, taking vitals and offering advice, she felt a familiar mix of exhaustion and purpose settle into her bones. Near the end of the day, she noticed an older man sitting alone, his posture slightly hunched, his hands folded neatly in his lap. There was something about him that tugged at her attention, a vague sense of recognition she could not place. When she approached him, she saw the lines on his face, etched by time and quiet resilience, and the same gentle eyes she had glimpsed years ago through the pharmacy's glass doors. Her heart began to race, though she could not yet explain why. As Hannah reviewed his chart, she learned that his name was Michael Turner, a retired mechanic living on a fixed income, recently widowed, struggling with untreated diabetes because he often chose groceries over medication. The story was painfully familiar. She felt tears prick her eyes as she helped him, careful to keep her voice steady and her movements calm. When she finished, she paused, studying his face, searching her memory. Something in her expression must have changed, because Michael looked up at her more closely, his brow furrowing as if he too sensed something unspoken passing between them. Recognition dawned slowly, like a sunrise after a long night. Years ago, he had stopped at a pharmacy on his way home from visiting his wife in the hospital. He had seen a young woman at the counter, pale and trembling, and he had recognized the look in her eyes because it mirrored the fear he had felt when medical bills nearly crushed them years before. He had paid her bill without thinking much of it, believing only that if he could ease one person's burden, even briefly, it was worth it. Hannah listened as the pieces fell into place, her hands shaking now as she understood the full circle of that small act. The man who had unknowingly saved her during one of her darkest moments was sitting in front of her, vulnerable in a way that mirrored who she once was. The weight of it pressed down on her, not as sadness, but as awe. Kindness, she realized, had a way of echoing through time, returning when least expected. In the weeks that followed, Hannah went out of her way to help Michael navigate the healthcare system, connecting him with assistance programs and checking in on him regularly. She never treated him as a debt to be repaid, but as a human being worthy of the same compassion he had once shown her. Their bond grew quietly, built on shared understanding rather than words. If this story has reached something deep inside you, if it has reminded you that small acts can change lives in ways we may never see, take a moment now to like the video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel so these stories of hope can continue to spread. And just before we reach the end, I want to ask you to comment below and share what kindness means to you, or if you have ever experienced a moment that changed your life unexpectedly. Years later, as Hannah stood in the hospital hallway watching sunlight spill through tall windows, she reflected on the fragile threads that connected people across time. A stranger's choice had carried her through years of hardship, guiding her toward a life where she could be that stranger for someone else. She understood now that kindness did not always announce itself, and gratitude did not always find its way back immediately. Sometimes it took years for the reason to reveal itself, and when it did, it felt like grace. Hannah continued her work, never forgetting where she came from, never underestimating the power of a single moment of compassion. And somewhere in the quiet spaces between ordinary days, the world kept turning, softened just a little by the people who chose to help without expecting anything in return.